Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to today's True Business Stories podcast. I am Bill Winter and I'm here with my co-host Mark Edmonds. So Mark, welcome back from Perth. I know you've been over there for a week or so. One of your sons has just got his first job as a paramedic. How did that turn out?
What a great city. I left Perth in the 20s, blue skies, and then hopped on a plane as it started to rain in Perth and got off here and thought, I think I'll go back. But great city, great place to live and work. So.
And your son in his first job as a paramedic, does that look really good?
It looks interesting. I don't know how he does it when he talks about the things that they see. It's I don't know how they do it, but he takes it in his stride, and we need people like him to look after people like us. So
good. Well, more importantly, I want to introduce our guest today, Amy Fisher. Amy owns a very important legal practice called Succession Legal. And as we go through the interview today, we will discuss why it's so important to get involved in succession planning, particularly for business owners and people in partnerships. Not only succession planning, but we've got some really great experiences over the years where wills have caused all sorts of problems, or I guess the issue of no will has caused more problems. So welcome, Amy. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me to do this.
And I'm sure you're feeling slightly nervous, but don't. It's quite informal. So, Amy, where did life all begin? You mentioned off air that you're not a Geelong person.
No.
So where did life begin?
Well, life began in a little small country town in New Zealand, where I was born in Pyraw, which was a little town founded by great-great-great-great-grandfather. And I spent my first year there, and my mother was into adventures, so she decided that my father, who was a trained A-grade mechanic, that we would all head up to the highlands of Papua New Guinea, and my father would work on the tractors and the trucks on coffee plantations, and we would have an adventure in the late 70s. So we headed up there for 3 years, and then my brother was born, and they decided it would be time to head back to New Zealand, but not before a quick stopover in Melbourne, and they quite liked Melbourne, and Dad ended up with a job, and so I went to kindergarten in South Oakley, and they brought their first house in Cheltenham. So I spent my primary years and high school years in Cheltenham, going to the local primary school, the local high school. And they had my parents had a very successful business in Dandenong, but life was good, and I decided at the age of 9 I was going to do law, and continued down that path. I'm not really sure I knew what being a lawyer was all about other than what was on TV, but that's what I decided to do. So that was my focus going through high school, that I would do the subjects that would allow me to do law, but not really ever sure that I would probably have the marks to get into Melbourne or Monash. But so come high school, I applied for the tertiary applications to Melbourne, Monash, and Deakin had just started their law school down here in Geelong, so it was about 2 or 3 years old at the time. So I put all the applications in, and in those days you didn't get them on the internet. You went down to the local 7-Eleven and picked up the paper at midnight with your friends and went through, and unfortunately I didn't get into law, so I got into arts and commerce at Deakin at Burwood. So trotted along and signed up for that, but got home from signing up and sat there in tears and said, no, I don't want to do this. I want to do law. So when I went to the enrolment at Deakin, I said to the lady there, I said, how do I get into law? Like, what can I do to get into law at Geelong? And she said, I don't know, but here's the phone number to the law school in Geelong. Give them a call. So I got home, and after I cleared the tears and that, I rang the law school in Geelong and I said, I really want to do law. How do I do law? And she said, all the offers have gone out. Unless someone cancels or doesn't accept their offer, you'll just have to wait. And she said, ring us back in a couple of days and we'll see if there's a spot available. So I think in those days, no mobile phones were just coming on board. So I sat literally next to the phone for the next couple of days waiting to see if they were going to ring me. And then I rang the school again. No, still no answer. So I waited. And I think then from for the next couple of days, I rang every day for about a week to see if I would get a spot into law school. And they finally rang and they said, if you can be here tomorrow in Geelong and pay $300 to secure a spot, you can go to Deakin Law School. So
great story.
I was 17 at the time, and so my parents quickly bundled me up and I found a share house and, arrived in Geelong.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history.
Well, history, it's a lesson in persistence, isn't it, Mark? That's the other thing. So from a work point of view, what was your first job? Where did you did you do part-time work? And
through high school, my first job was paper round at 11, and I helped in my parents' businesses, and then at 14 3/4 I got a job as an entree chef at one of the local restaurants, cooking the garlic bread and the garlic prawns, and then I actually did a job. Those that are into craft and that cross-stitching, and I would actually sew the cross-stitches for the designers that they would photograph on the packets that you see at Spotlight, and then Safeway. So I was in the deli and actually transitioned. So I was in the deli at Hampton, and then when I came down to Geelong, I was lucky enough to get a job or transfer across to Wampon Safeway. So I spent all my university years, studying and then working at Safeway.
And so many people do rely on Woolies and Kmart's and Coles and to get started.
Yeah.
So first legal role?
First legal role, straight out of uni, actually, I got a job at KPMG as a tax consultant. So in the back of my mind, I did law and commerce, and I had my father telling me, you've got to use that commerce degree. You've got to, business is about practicality and things. So the first 18 months was actually as a tax consultant, and I had been offered a job in law, but as I say, Dad was in my ear sort of saying, oh, you've got to use both of those degrees. So I didn't accept the law job and went to accounting. But 18 months into it, and I knew law was where I wanted to go. So I handed out my applications again, and I was fortunate that in those days, the jobs were actually offered a year before, so you had articles. So once you've done your law degree, you had to work a year in a firm as an article clerk, and it was in the June of that year, and one of the firms in Geelong were interviewing for the following start date in February of the following year. And they received my resume, and I got a phone call at my office at KPMG and said, if you can be here by 2:00, we'll give you an interview for articles, but starting now, not waiting till next year. So I had to make an excuse and leave. And so, I was fortunate enough to get articles at one of the local firms here in Geelong.
Howard Andrews?
It was Howard Andrews.
It was just a guess. But
And Mark, there's your sliding doors moment again,
Absolutely.
isn't it?
Isn't it amazing?
In our interviews and talking to people, it's amazing. And and I keep repeating it on these interviews that Mark calls them sliding doors, I call them tipping points. Things just happen and tips you into the next opportunity.
Yeah.
Now, that's led you to where you are today with your own law practice or legal practice called Succession Legal. And it's and one of the reasons I'm interested in hearing you today is that as a consultant to family businesses, I'm absolutely shocked on the occasions when I sit down for the first time with potential clients, and one of my standard questions is, have you got a will? Tell me about your succession plan. And I've got to tell you, the majority of them give me an answer that says, no, we don't. And that frightens the daylights out of me because, as no doubt you will have seen over your career, and I've seen over my consulting career, is that there are numerous disaster stories out there, particularly when the founder dies or if someone dies unexpectedly, as I've seen happen. So tell me, why did you get into that particular area of specialty, and some of your observations as to why you think it's such an important area?
It's an interesting area. It's one, certainly as a young lawyer, that's not seen as a very sexy area. It's very, considered to be the dull and boring area. But I think certainly over the last 20 years, you appreciate that life is full of complexities. And certainly even 20 years ago, there was very few blended families, and we've evolved now with lots of blended families and lots of different relationships or what relationships are. So,
where did the name Succession Legal come from? What made you pick that as as a topic?
Oh, look, my father always said you've got to have a name for your business that tells people exactly what you
Very good.
do.
Good
so
advice.
that was the succession. So, look, having come from a background of commerce at KPMG, when I was at Harwood Andrews, I worked in the commercial department, and I worked, and that, because of the commercial department, that evolved with the wills and estates. And unfortunately, at the time, we also had one of the partners at Harwood Andrews pass away that was head of wills and estates. So there was that transition and evolving of working through the commercial part of someone's business. And then they were very good at saying, well, you need to put in place your succession plan. So I really developed that love of helping people, and more so the mums and dads or the elderly clients, that have been married for 50 years and their partner dies, and they just feel lost at a time, and helping them through that process and the next steps of winding up the estate and how they get through.
So what would you, to people listening who, and we all know there's plenty of companies out there, family companies specifically, where many do not have a will, and the patriarch in many instances thinks it's going to go to the son, and sometimes the son doesn't want the business. So what's some advice you'd say to folk that don't have a will and don't have a succession plan? What's some of the things you've seen or learnt?
It's understanding, particularly for business owners, understanding the structure that you've got in place. A lot of businesses, and having started my own business, completely understand that you focus on hitting the ground, getting the clients, getting the business coming in, and not really understanding sometimes the structure that your accountant has put in place for you, or how that is going to work in terms of what would happen if you do pass away suddenly. So for a lot of our clients, they come in and they say, I own this property, or I own the factory that my business is running out of, and we dig a little bit deeper and we understand that it's in a trust. And in a will, you can only give away the control of a trust. You can't actually give away the trust itself or the asset that's within a trust. So for those in business, one, it's putting that will in place, and also powers of attorney. I had a phone call yesterday, and a business owner has dementia, and the family's trying to now run the business, and they've gone to the bank and realised that they don't have signatories on the bank account, and they actually can't pay the bills, and they don't know what to do. And we have powers of attorney for ourselves, but companies need to have powers of attorney as well, and putting those into place and looking at that structure and what might happen if there is a sudden accident or a heart attack, and understanding where everything is. 20 years ago with estates, we used to, if someone passed away, we knew they had a bank account with a big five bank. We knew they probably had a Telstra account. Nowadays, you can have 100 different phone providers and 100 different electricity providers, and understanding just everything that you actually do have it, and that someone knows about that. A lot of your information now is all on a phone, and how do we get that information off the phone or the computer or the email address
Facebook account.
or Facebook account?
Yes, the domain names is another issue. Look, Amy, in some of the work that I've done, I've come across situations, and it's in particular where it's a husband and wife have been working together and they actually work in partnership. And on 3 occasions in particular, and obviously I won't be naming anybody here, but they both partners thought that they owned half of the business each. Both of them thought that they had control of the bank accounts. And I've seen instances where the wife has said to me, it got to a stage where they want to sell the business. I said, okay, we'd go through the process of setting it up for sale, getting it what I call investment ready. And then suddenly I find out that the bank account's in one partner's name and the other one didn't know. And it's just amazing some of the sort of intricate little details that come back to bite you. But the other thing that I'd like to talk to you about is sitting down and having that family conversation. And one of my areas is to get the whole family together. And I say to parents, particularly older parents who started the business, have you spoken to each of your sons or daughters and had a conversation about what's going to happen if you die or something, or become incapacitated, just as you spoke about power of attorney. And it's amazing how many people are too scared to have that conversation. And where the successful ones I've seen are where I've actually had the conversations with the parents, then had individual conversations with the individuals next in line, and then got the whole family together. And boy, has that made a difference. Although it doesn't always work. Some go rogue on you, you know that. But so what's your thoughts about having these conversations and planning, getting the family together and having the hard discussions?
Look, it certainly helps to have those discussions. It doesn't always work. Businesses are very much like farming families. Often there's one asset and it's very hard to divide that asset up, but it's worth having that discussion as the business owner or thinking outside just the business. How many children do I have? What do I want to leave them? What other assets have I got? So much energy and so much focus goes into a business, and a bit like a farm, that they forget that there's no other assets outside the farm or the business that may be able to go out, to other family members. And it's having those discussions also about the children that are working in the business. Are they working for a market salary, or are they working for free with an expectation that in the future they may inherit the business? And I think understanding if they're working for a market salary, that maybe that business isn't theirs to actually just inherit, because are they different to any employee down the road? But if they have been working for free in the business, well, what is their expectation around that? And maybe the other children don't understand that they've made sacrifices to work in the business for free for a long period of time to get it off the ground, and therefore there may be some there needs to be some reward towards that particular child.
I've read some really great case studies on farming families when it comes to this whole succession issue. And one legal case I read where one of the next generation were working in the business and never paid a wage. And when it came time for the estate to be settled, is that particular individual then went and made a claim going backdated, and it changed the whole aspect of the will. And the other interesting thing is that I know a judge in the family court in Canberra, and I had a conversation with her one day around the barbecue. Well, how do you make a decision? And she said 2 words: fair and equitable. And that's how, if you end up in the court, the courts have no other way to look at it than being fair and equitable across the board, no matter what mum and dad thought they wanted to happen. Is that a fair comment?
It is. So I guess in Victoria it is state-based legislation, and so we've seen some changes where Victoria had the widest laws in terms of who could make a claim against an estate. That's certainly been narrowed down, and there's a big focus on need. So it's not about making things fair, or it is about making things fair, but it's not about reward. So it's not rewarding that child that came and took mum shopping, every week for the groceries, or cared for her as much. It's what are the needs? So what pool of assets have we got? Who are what we call the objects of someone's affection, and what is everyone's needs? And it's trying to balance contributions, but also the need of the family, and how those assets are divided up. So
advice for a business owner: put a will in place, step 1?
Step 1, not just a will, it's understanding the will, a power of attorney for them personally, a power of attorney for the company if there is a company, understanding superannuation. So a lot of business owners now have their business building, obviously in a self-managed super fund, and superannuation doesn't form part of an estate automatically. So it's understanding that structure, and so it's an overall asset plan as well as just the will. But certainly sitting down and having those discussions very early on as to what that might look like.
And how often would you suggest it gets reviewed?
Big life events, the obvious one, but I do say to to get your will out of the drawer every 3 years and have a look at it. And the reason I say that is with your superannuation, you actually have to complete a binding death nomination every 3 years. Otherwise, they do expire, and the trustees of the super fund are then able to distribute your superannuation in a way that you may not agree with. And so there is that need every 3 years at least to update that binding death nomination. But I say that's a good time to have an overall look at the plan. Even if you don't change it, you can pop it back in the drawer, but at least every 3 years.
And keep Bill. And to keep the will with you, what? Just from a fascinating process that I've been through the same sort of thing. But where's the will kept?
For our clients, we store our wills at our office in safe security, and the reason is that often you'll find if clients keep their will at home, one, we don't know where they've kept it, whether it's under the mattress or in a cupboard, and two, clients have a habit of maybe taking them out of the drawer to have that 3-year review, getting a pencil or a pen and making a change or a little scribble, and that can suggest to the court there may be some invalidity. They might get out a piece of paper and write some notes about some small gifts, jewellery, bits and pieces, and staple it to the will, and then they might rip it off in the future. And any of those markings, staple marks, paperclip marks, pencil marks, can suggest that that person had revoked that will or they wanted to make some changes. So it can cause us some problems down the track when we're trying to prove the will with the court. So for that reason, we try and keep them tucked away unmarked.
And is it paper? Do you electronically file? Is it still paper?
It's still paper. So there has been some changes with COVID to potentially that you can electronically sign a will now. We at our office still prefer to do the two people with the witness on the pen and paper. There are informal wills, so you can do them by video and things, but traditionally we still stick to the pen and paper will.
Just talking about that then, I noticed pop-ups come up on my computer every now and again about online wills, and they're popping up all the time. So I guess I know how you're going to answer this question, but and what you've already discussed is highlighted why it's so important to go and sit down with somebody that knows what they're doing. So what's your comment about doing a do-it-yourself will, as I call it?
Look, they have a place, so I won't dismiss them all together. There is, I guess, that there is a need for some of those will kits for people that maybe don't have a lot of assets to divide up. But I certainly think that you are best placed to sit down with your solicitor. It's not only it's one, understanding your assets. So I really describe to clients, a will is like an iceberg. The will's a nice shiny bit you see on the surface, but you need to understand how you hold assets. What assets have you got? So one of our biggest problems is property. So you can hold property two ways. One automatically passes to someone, so it doesn't form part of the estate. The other is tenants in common, where you can give away your half. So you need to understand how you hold that. For the business owners, the structures, superannuation is a Commonwealth asset where our wills are done under state law. So again, they're a little bit like two magnets. They'll come together, but they'll have a fight against how there is that division. So you really need to understand your structure, tax implications. So I was talking to one of my staff the other day, and we were describing one client situation as a little game of whack-a-mole, because every time we could fix a problem in one area, we had a tax issue in another area, or we had a Centrelink issue, or we had a control issue. And so it's not just, you can't just put it in a nice little box and put a ribbon around it. We really have all these underlying issues that you just don't see, that you really need to have that proper discussion.
And particularly for business owners or people in partnership in business, it just becomes so important, because it can be an absolute mess if they don't get it right. And one of my favourite bits of advice to people who come to me and say, well, we want to start a business and we want to go into partnership, my first comment is, well, let's write the divorce papers first. And in other words, if you're starting a business, or even if you're in business now and you're in it with partners and or family members, stop, go and talk to someone like Amy and write out what happens if. But that's the sort of thing you should have done right from the very beginning. And that causes all sorts of stitch when somebody suddenly wants to say, I've had enough of this business, I want to get out, and there's no buy or sell agreement or anything like that. My final question, I guess, is about business and divorce. You got any comments about that? Business partners and divorce, I guess.
Oh, I think I've never practiced in family law, but it's never easy. It's And I think that it's really important that you whether your business is with your spouse or your business is with another business partner, is to go and have that buy-sell agreement and really understand what would happen if there is a relationship breakdown, or whether it's with your spouse or with your business partner, and put those steps in place as to how you will buy each other out if one of you were to pass away, or one of you actually wants just out of the business. Not everyone can stay in the same business and, for the next 30 years. So what does that look like? And put those contingencies in place well before you have those disagreements.
So, Amy, just a couple of other sort of things to wrap up. One, how hard was it to make the decision to set up your own business? Is there anything you would do differently looking back, or no, take the plunge, off we went?
It was a matter of it evolved slightly. I had taken a break from the law. I had actually gone through a divorce and wasn't really sure whether I wanted to practice law anymore. And I'd done a lot of study. I'd done a specialisation in wills and estates, and so I just looked back and thought, I'm just not sure this is for me. And I took a year out and worked with a financial planner. And that was fantastic. It actually gave me a different insight into estate planning from a different perspective. And through that, I saw the need again for people just needing to have wills. And so we sort of started a little business within that financial planning practice, doing wills for their clients. And then someone else tapped me on the shoulder and said, well, I'd love to refer work to you, but while you're with that financial planner, it's a bit hard for me to refer that work. And so I took the plunge. 11 years on, I'm still here.
Excellent.
And you have your moments, but I think that's any business owner really sort of says, am I doing the right thing? And you keep going. And, we haven't set out to chase the big guys or anything. I've just liked doing what I do and helping the clients that come through my door.
That's actually, Mark, that's why we're having this interview. If you remember, we were interviewing somebody, and I think after the interview I asked them, the couple, do you have a will? Yeah. And she said, yes, we have. We've done all that. And I said, oh, who did that for you? And she said, Amy Fisher. She's really good. So that's what prompted us to get in touch with you to have this conversation.
So one final question. What do you do outside of work? What keeps you sane? We've lots of talk about mental health and work and pressures. So what do you do? What's your escape?
Escape, I have three dogs at home that keep me very busy, and friends that breed and show dogs. So I get involved in that. I do a bit of volunteer work, and I live on an acre, so lots of gardening, and I just brought myself a new ride-on mower. So
there you go.
But I guess as a business owner, unfortunately, a lot of trying to find that balance, but a lot of it on the weekend is working on the business, during the week working in the business, and then trying to work through and make the business better for the staff that I have, and trying to move that forward and evolve it. Yeah.
Fantastic. So if anyone wants to get in touch with Amy Fisher, Succession Legal, what's the website?
Successionlegal.com.au, and we've just launched a nice new website with lots of information about wills and powers of attorney and superannuation. So
fantastic, Amy.
All right, thank you, Amy. That's terrific. It's such an important area, as Mark and I both know. Mark through his mentoring and me through my family business consulting. And most people don't give it enough thought. That's it. So well done and good luck for the future. And I'm sure that we will have a follow-up interview sometime in the future and talk about some real case studies.
Thank you.